Well, hi, this is Paul. I'm interested in talking to you about a theory I'm working on, that all writing is essentially argumentative, as you can tell from the title. We have this kind of basic segmentation of different types of writing. Three big ones, of course, are narrative, expository, and persuasive. Common Core kind of shifts persuasive writing into argumentative writing, which is a little more complex. Expository writing becomes explanatory or critical or analytical, perhaps even technical. There's also descriptive writing, which can also be called aesthetic, right? So no matter what type of writing you're employing and for what reason and who your audience is, it's my contention that every writer's arguing something. You're trying to convince the reader to adopt a position or to accept a point of view or to appreciate a particular character for a certain reason, or to learn from a situation, or somehow you're trying to convince the reader of something. Now, George Orwell, who seemed to know what he was talking about, he said there were four main reasons that writers write. He said one was just sheer egoism. They just love the way they sound when they talk, or that they love what their words look like on the page, and they think that they're hot stuff. There's aesthetic enthusiasm, Orwell says. That means that they just are enthused about wordplay and about ideas on the page and how those can be presented, like poetry, for instance. There's historical impulse, where writers are trying to understand the past, or maybe understand the present in relation to the past. And then there's political purpose. There's where we enter into, we're trying to shift the minds of our readers. Okay? So I've got a series of texts that I want to look at. Okay? So the first one is The Road Not Taken from the Poet Laureate Robert Frost. Then I want to look at The Telltale Heart from Edgar Allan Poe. Then a newspaper article about suicide bombing. It's a recent article from the New York Times. This piece is from Lance Armstrong. Well, Lance, of course, and his ghostwriter, writing about dealing with cancer and its treatment and how that affected his life. There's a how-to instructional manual here, how to build a three-person hammock. And an excerpt from To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Okay? So let me back up to the first one. Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. I'm not going to read all of these texts to you, of course, and you're probably very familiar with it. But I want to draw your attention to the last stanza. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So you have this ambiguous ending, right? This can be interpreted in a couple of different ways. The one most often interpreted is that this was a good thing, right? It made all the difference for his life. His life has been bettered by having taken the road less traveled by. You could look at it conversely and say, well, his life has been miserable ever since, and so he wishes he hadn't taken the one less traveled by. But most people opt for the former interpretation. Either way, Frost is arguing that exploring unpopular pursuits is worthy of consideration. Everybody else takes this one road. I see that there's another road that hasn't gotten much footwear. I should consider taking that other path. There might be something there for me that's worthy of thinking about. Okay? So these words here, it's explicit. There's a claim that you can make, and you have evidence from the text that can support that claim. Okay? Now, The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. Another famous text, right? It's public domain. It's one of the best storytellers of the 19th century. So this story, of course, is about a murderer who is being driven mad by his own guilt, and it all comes to a head at the very end of the story. He completely loses his grip. You can see all the exclamation points here. Almighty God! He finally just loses it and admits his guilt to all those around him. He can't stand it because he's hearing a beating heart underneath the floorboards that he put it there, and obviously he's been driven insane. So there's an implicit argument here that immoral conduct has natural, inevitable consequences. It's never stated as such explicitly by the author, but the reader should be convinced by this story that when you commit heinous acts, there will be heinous consequences. Okay. The newspaper article. You got suicide bomber on foot attacks joint patrol in eastern Afghanistan. 19 people were killed. This happened recently. Unfortunately, this happens so often that you may not even have known this occurred just a couple months ago, because it seems to happen weekly, if not sometimes daily, especially in a region as far away as the Middle East. But this is newsworthy. Why? Because it's a terrible thing, right? You have innocent lives being destroyed, and the ripple effects of that, all their loved ones, their friends, their community, it's just a horrible thing to happen. And then after they talk about who it was that died and where it was and when, etc., then we go into the discussion of who's to blame, and we see that the Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack. It was the fourth suicide bombing in that province in the last 5 months. Despite intensive operations over the past several years, the area remains heavily infiltrated. It doesn't look like they know how to stop it, so odds are it's going to keep happening. So more horrific events to come, right? So these two reporters are arguing implicitly that suicide bombing is a horrendous act that's difficult to prevent. So in essence, that is a claim that is being made by these reporters, even though they're sticking to the who, what, when, where, why, and how. They do make an implicit claim. They are arguing this point. Okay? The next article, or the next text, I should say, is Lance Armstrong's book. It's not about the bike. It's a good read, actually. I recommend it. It's good for adults and for students. This particular excerpt, he's about to go into surgery, and he knows that things could go wrong. He might not wake up from the surgery, or it might not kill him, but it might alter him for the rest of his life in various ways. And so he's confronted with his own possible demise, and he eventually asks, what sort of character did I hope to show? How do I want to conduct myself, knowing that I could die, and those who know and love me will form an overall opinion of who I am, and that'll be shared, and that's my legacy that I leave behind. And so there's this explicit argument that when you confront your own demise, you're impelled to examine your own character. It's just how it works. If you're going to be confronted with the fact that you might die, you are going to be thinking these kinds of thoughts, and you will examine your character. All right. How to build a 3-person hammock. Of course, you've always wondered how to build a 3-person hammock. I've always wondered it my entire life. Well, now I know how to do it. William Gerstel, I hope I pronounced that correctly, provides this really cool illustration where you see the whole image, and then from a bird's eye view here, and then of course you see in here this up close images of how everything connects and everything. It's pretty neat. Okay, so you have it in steps. First, you're going to find the parts, and you need very specific parts like galvanized steel pipes with threaded ends. You need pipe caps, eye bolts. You need nuts and lock washers, ratcheting tie-down straps, and stakes. Then you need to use your tools and drill holes in those pipe caps. Screw them onto the ends of the pipes. You need to arrange those pipes in a certain way. You need to then put on the ratcheting straps, and then you need to stake them to the ground and eventually enjoy them. Take a nap. Okay? So what is this author, Gerstel, arguing? Okay? In my view, specific tools and proper procedures are required to successfully build furniture like this. Okay? You need these specific tools. You need to follow these specific procedures if you're going to build this type of furniture, and it's going to hold up over time. If you don't get the right tools and parts, if you don't follow these steps, then who knows what you're going to get. All right? So we have this implicit argument that you need these things. So there's a claim being made implicitly, and you can back it up with evidence from the text. Okay? And then finally we have To Kill a Mockingbird from Harper Lee. Arguably one of the best novels of the 20th century. So this particular excerpt, we have Atticus Finch has gone down to the jail cell where Tom Robinson is waiting to find out his fate, and Atticus has the sneaking suspicion that there might be a mob who shows up to steal away Robinson from his jail cell and then do him harm. So Atticus Finch goes down there to defend Robinson if that should occur. Jim, the son, has the suspicion that his dad might be in danger, so he wants to go check on him. And then Scout and Dill, of course, don't want to stay behind and miss out on all the fun. So Atticus is confronted by a mob, and Scout, when she finally recognizes Mr. Cunningham, she runs into the throng and then says hello to him very politely and strikes up a conversation, which is very awkward because they're hell bent on violence, and they're trying to pretend like they're anonymous, and there she is. She knows who he is, and she's talking to him. She knows his children, and then she reminds him that through the entailments are bad quote that Mr. Cunningham had used the legal services of Atticus Finch and then couldn't pay him for it, so he would bring him installments of payment by giving him food on his porch throughout the year. As he would grow food on his property, he would bring him the goods. And so all of this finally kind of breaks through this aggressive facade, and he finally says, "Yeah, I'll tell my son you said, 'Hey, little lady.'" And then he straightens up and he waves his big paw, and he tells the boys, "Let's get out of here." All the steam has been taken out of them. They don't have it in them anymore to commit this terrible crime that they had set out to do. So it's this beautiful moment, and then of course we find out that Mr. Underwood, the newspaper publisher, had a gun trained on them the entire time to defend Atticus should they actually start to commit the crime they were planning on. So we have this implicit argument from Harper Lee that children's innocence can bring clarity to foolish notions such as racism or sexism. The claim is there. It's defendable. You can use the text to support your claim. So all of these texts, from poetry to narrative literary fiction to informational text to informational what they call literary nonfiction, right? So it's kind of an autobiography. We have technical writing, and we have another example of literary fiction. All of these texts, in my view, are evidence that all writing is essentially argumentative. Now, if you're willing to go with me on that position, then we can use the framework for argumentative writing as our basis to approach all writing. Right? Any writing that we're going to assign our students to do, we can start with that framework that we have from Holimon that's in your Common Core binder. We can start there and build a common framework that we always use to approach writing. So I'm going to end this session here, and then we'll build some other these Camtasia videos to talk about that particular framework of writing from Holimon. Okay? So this is Paul Holimon signing out, and we'll also put this PDF document in Angel for you to view on your own if you just want to use pieces of these texts for your instruction. Okay? Take care.